All right. Well, back with the EntreLeadership podcast for a second time. Charles Koch, thank you so much for being here with us today. We're so honored to have you.
Well, it's my pleasure and honor. You all do a great job, so I'm looking forward to it, Daniel.
Well, this will be an exciting conversation. You know, many people know who you are, but I also know that you're intentional. You don't do a lot of interviews, and you kind of try to keep a low profile for somebody of your accomplishments and status. I'd love to just start with your story. You're loaded. You're like one of the richest people in the world. You're multi-billionaire, super successful in business. But you didn't start that way. Take us back to the beginning, maybe the humble beginnings, if you will.
Well, I grew up on an experimental farm. My father was an entrepreneur, really more of an inventor than an entrepreneur. But he called himself a half-baked chemist. So we lived on this farm where he experimented with different animals, with feed, with breeding, and so on, always trying to find ways to improve results. And he told me that he didn't want me to be a country club bum because we were prosperous, and he'd seen too many other kids that grew up in prosperous families waste their lives and be miserable. So he had me working all my spare time, starting, believe it or not, at age 6. And that was chores like starting digging dandelions, and it was milking cows, shoveling manure, feeding the animals, fixing fence, and so on. And so I didn't think I was particularly good at anything, and I was always getting in trouble because I was kind of an independent cuss, and I wanted to do things my way and do it the easy way, and so that didn't always please my father. So I got a lot of punishment, which some kids get better when they get a lot of punishment, but for some reason I knew I deserved every bit of punishment. But anyway, in the 3rd grade, I discovered I had an aptitude. The teacher was putting math problems on the board, and I asked myself, why is she doing that? The answers are obvious. And then I noticed that none of the other students found it obvious. And so I said, wow, maybe I have a gift, an aptitude. And later on, I learned in studying multiple intelligence theory that I had this particular form that was probably the only form I had of mathematical or aptitude for math and other abstract concepts. But even with that, I didn't know what to do with it. I was kind of lost and floundered around and wasn't particularly good at anything. I mean, I did well in math and science because those were easy for me, but for everything else, I didn't do well in my work. By the time I'd graduated from high school, I'd been to 8 schools. So I was a bit of a problem, and I was lost.
Well, I'm curious to hear more about this notion of your dad not wanting you to take the easy path. My wife and I have discussed this in our parenting and trying to figure out, neither of us grew up with a lot, and we remember what it was like to struggle, and we developed a hunger that we really had to go out and figure out life and become successful, and now we have the ability to provide a lot for our children. But there's this fear that in providing some of the creature comforts that you're going to deny them of that pain that instills this hunger and this drive. You're a great example of being a part of a family that had wealth and blessing, but didn't just coast with that. You actually took it way beyond kind of what was, kind of your origins. And it seems like your dad knew something about that and knew the value of hard work at an early age.
No, absolutely. And it was beyond that. He had great values. I mean, he was tough. he was Dutch, and one of his favorite sayings was, "You can tell the Dutch, but you can't tell them much."
Huh.
and but he had basic values of success and of contribution, and that was he had integrity, humility, treated others with respect, had a strong work ethic, and was a lifelong learner. And that's what he always told me. He says, "Son, learn everything you can because you never know when it will come in handy." And so the reason I took all this to heart is because he lived by it. And so many parents might preach the right things, but their actions are inconsistent with them, which makes the kids feel this is all hypocrisy and do the opposite. Well, I was blessed not to have that because he didn't ask anything of me that he didn't do himself.
It strikes me that many families who have values with a patriarch who lives these values and then instills those values into their children, there's really this honor in living up to those values and then advancing those values. You talk about a lot of principles that you've developed. When did you first latch on or consciously realize that you were extracting principles and then taking those things with you in your journey in life?
Well, it was really when I came back in 1961. It was after that, which was a long way after the third grade. I'd graduated from MIT and worked for a consulting company for a few years. And my father got me to come back by saying his health was poor and he didn't have long to live and the company wasn't in good shape. So either I had to come back to run it. And it was a small company then. We had two businesses. One was a crude oil gathering system in Oklahoma, and another was making internals for fractionating towers, which provide liquid separation, purification, and refineries and chemical plants. And those were our two businesses. But it was after I got back there and the company was in bad enough shape that I was able to make improvement, but still I felt empty. And so I was looking for something that would make me feel good about yourself. It's what Abraham Maslow said, that if you aren't fully developing your capabilities and realizing your potential, no matter how successful you are outwardly, you will be deeply unhappy. And that's where I was. So I said, I got to find something. So I stumbled on, or I was exposed to these what I call the principles of human progress. And as I learned my God, there are principles out there that will help me understand the way the world works and enable me to contribute and succeed. So I just felt uplifted as soon as I had that realization. It transformed me. All my attitude problems, everything I did changed at that point. And all I wanted to do is find more principles and apply them, learn how to apply them through trial and error, not only in business, but in every aspect of my life, in raising my children, in my philanthropy, in everything. And as I think I mentioned to you before, now in our company, we use over 100 of these principles. And that's what's made us successful. It's not my brilliance or anything, because no one is more surprised at what we've achieved than I am. Because as I said, I stumbled around for 20 years before I discovered this path that I got on, which is, to me, is what everybody needs to do. And everybody has a gift, some talent, some ability that will enable them to contribute. and succeed. And so the first thing is to find that, and then find how to develop it and apply it in a way that will enable you to realize your potential. Believe in yourself, because believing in other people starts with believing in yourself. And of course, that's what we describe in the book.
I want to get to the book in a minute. It's a great book, Believe in People, Bottom-Up Solutions for a Top-Down World. And you speak a lot to your business principles, but also a lot of philanthropy that you're doing at this stage. Before you had the means to be philanthropic, and you're building these principles and just trying to figure out how to be a CEO and build a team, what did you give yourself as your job description? How did you see success for yourself as a leader?
Well, as I said, my gift was pretty narrow. It was for abstractions. So I found early on, when I tried to do everything myself, I failed. So the first thing I had to do was focus in the area in which I had ability. I had the ability to contribute and make a difference. And that was in abstractions. And in business, that would be, okay, what's our vision, our strategies, our philosophy, the kind of people we will hire, how we will reward them, all these conceptual things. And then I had to find people who were good at implementing them, understanding and understanding them, believing in them, and being committed to these basic principles. And so I developed this philosophy on partnerships, and that means you have partnership with your wife, with your employees, with business partners, and so on. You have all kinds of partnerships. So what I was looking for were people with three things: you share vision and values, and you have complementary capabilities. And so I was saying, okay, what are the other critical things that I'm not good at that I need somebody with that talent who is also contribution motivated, who has good values. And this is critically important, I think, for all of us, for success, long-term success. It's as important to realize what you're not good at as what you are. And we've had so many employees that were really good at one thing, so they thought they were good at all these other things, like they might be a good trader or a good analyst. And they think that, okay, then they should be a good leader. And they had no leadership talent at all. So they ruined their careers by trying to do things and thinking that was a more cherished position to be up the hierarchy. Well, we don't reward people for being up the hierarchy. We reward people for the value they can help us create for our customers and other constituencies.
It really is a misnomer that to get into leadership, somehow that means that you're more successful. It sounds like you're describing it as a different skill, an alternative skill, but it's not necessarily a hierarchical notion that becoming a leader means you're more significant than somebody who's right in the sweet spot of what they're supposed to do. That's not necessarily a leadership role.
Right. I mean, you need all sorts of different talents and different abilities to be able to be successful at anything. And I mean, I'm a student of multiple intelligence theory, Howard Gardner's multiple intelligence theory, and that requires internal and external intelligence, interpersonal and extrapersonal intelligence. That is, know who you are. That's the first step in being a good leader. Know who you are, and then be able to judge what will motivate people around you. And to me, that's the definition of a leader. A true leader, not somebody stuck in a leadership position, is someone who makes those around him or her better.
Mm.
And if you're not doing that, and so here at Koch Industries, we look at leadership positions at anybody who has any supervisory aspects to their role. And so we only want people in any of those leadership positions who helps their people self-actualize. That is, helps their people understand their gift, help them develop it, and design a role that fits their gift, not stick them in whatever role you need, but of which a good part doesn't fit their particular aptitude.
It sounds like this idea of knowing who you are and knowing who you are not is vital. Obviously, that's a significant piece of success. I'm curious, in your journey as a young CEO, did you have a sense of who you were, or is that something you had to figure out over time?
No, I knew I was only good at that, but that didn't stop me. I mean, you need to be slapped around a lot, or I did, to get sufficient humility. So for a while, I thought I knew. And that was when I first came back with the company, the first thing my father told me is, son, I hope your first deal is a loser. Otherwise, you'll think you're a lot smarter than you are. And I didn't disappoint him.
I didn't disappoint him. Well, it's counterintuitive advice, but clearly your father was a wise man. What did that look like for you? The failures, the stumbling around. I'm curious the stories related to that.
Well, it was largely having a negative attitude.
Mm.
I mean, I wanted. At least looking back, what I wanted was to find a way to develop my particular aptitude, and then find out how to apply it in a way that would enable me to contribute and succeed, so I could believe in myself. That's what I wanted. I wanted to be able to believe in myself. Because as you see, the people who don't believe in themselves, who are negatively motivated, they don't just contribute, they contribute negatively. I mean, either to themselves, they become addicts, commit suicide, or take it out on others. And so this, I think, for our country and for any organization, the first thing you need to do is hire people who are contribution motivated, because what we have found, if we hire somebody who's particularly talented in a certain way, but is negatively motivated, that's going to be a disaster. And so I preach, look, if you're going to hire somebody who isn't contribution motivated, make sure they're real slow. Kind of inept at what they're doing, so we can catch them and get them out of here as fast as possible.
That's good. Yeah. That way they don't start too many fires. You know.
Oh, yeah. Otherwise, I mean, because we've hired some really talented people who are negatively motivated, and they've created disasters for us.
Yeah. And you got so much cleanup to do afterwards. What was the epiphany for you? You said you had a negative attitude, you weren't happy, and then you had this breakthrough. Was there a person involved? Was there an advisor? Did you read a book? Was it over a season? How did you go through that transformation?
Yeah, it was being exposed. It was from the people I've met and an organization I got involved with back in the early '60s called the Institute for Humane Studies, and they had scholars that were familiar with a lot of these principles, and they started giving me books. And as I read them, one night I was reading one of them, and I had what Maslow called peak experience. That is just a thrill. I couldn't sleep. I said, my God, this is going to change my life. As I said, this will help me understand the way the world works and help me contribute and succeed. And so from then on, it was just, and it still is, a thirst. Every day, what I try to learn new principles, or how do we better apply the principles we're using. And every day, any day I can contribute is a great day for me. And those are the forms in which I contribute when I do.
Well, I want to dive on this because it's so inspiring to hear somebody, you're in your mid-80s. You're one of the top 20, if not above, wealthiest people on the planet. You've accomplished more than anyone ever imagines accomplishing in their life, yet you're still hungry. There's this drive. And it'd be really easy to say, hey, I've had a great life. I'm comfortable, and to just kind of coast and just enjoy the fruits of your labor. I don't sense that's how you're wired. How have you stayed hungry in the midst of having all of these successes and the ability to be very comfortable rise up around you? I mean, you don't have to continue driving the way that you are.
Well, it's like Viktor Frankl, another one of my role models, besides Frederick Douglass, that I wrote about in the book, said, ever more people today have the means to live, but no meaning to live for. And people say, gosh, why don't you retire, go lie on the beach somewhere? I said, what, do you want me to die? If I don't have purpose, if I don't have meaning, if I don't feel I'm contributing, I don't like myself. That's what my father used to say, son, what I want to do, I want to help you amount to something in life. That's the way he put it. But to me, that's contributing. And it's another one of my mentors, Abraham Maslow, put it to self-actualize, that is, to be what you can be. The selfish and unselfish need to merge. And he called that synergy. And that's what I find, that now in what we do is in business, we say, okay, what capabilities do we need to build so we can create value for others, starting with our customers and employees? And then to continually improve those. And when we do that, it makes everybody feel great, and it transforms not just me, but our employees. I can't tell you how many employees after they've left, so they're not just buttering me up, to say, come back to me, either come and visit me or write me and say, I can't tell you how much this focus on creating value for others has transformed my life, not just in business, but in every other aspect. And in my religious organization, I'm helping the pastor or whoever find ways to create more value for his or her constituents. And so it's a matter. So you've got to have purpose, I think, and the people who become negatively motivated or deficiency motivated are because they don't have a purpose. They don't have meaning in your lives. So that's part of the secret, and that's what discovering these principles did for me, gave meaning in my life.
I want to talk about a few of the principles, but first I want to underscore this idea of purpose. We talk a lot in EntreLeadership about how a business should have a purpose that's bigger than just the bottom line. And like you said, it's all about contribution. It's making an impact. It's providing jobs. It's solving problems for your customers. There's a sense of gratification and meaning that comes from that. And we believe that's the only way to really be sustainable. Because as you said, if you're miserable with yourself, you're going to quit doing it. I mean, if you do it for a while and you get the external success, but you don't have that internal connection, you're going to give up and there's no sustainability. And so you've got to have anchor into this bedrock of purpose. Has your purpose evolved over time? I mean, similar to the Maslow, a lot of business starts out as, survival is their primary purpose, and they get to kind of go up the pyramid. Has that been true for your purpose, or have you always had kind of this true north that you talk about?
Well, I always had the notion that of a couple of things. One, that we we had to create value for our customers, and we had to reward our employees. We had to use the knowledge of all our employees, not just a few so-called leaders who tell everybody else what to do. That wouldn't work. And then we needed to continually transform ourselves so we could do that better and better, because that was another concept I learned of creative, Schumpeter's concept of creative destruction, in which he said in 1942, he wrote, for business people, the ground is constantly crumbling beneath their feet. Well, if it was crumbling in 1942, in 2021, it's an earthquake. Things are changing so fast.
Yes.
So those are the kind of principles that have made us successful.
So you've got over 100 principles now that your team uses inside your organization. One of the great things about principles is it allows you to advance decision-making to the front lines. I mean, you're the CEO, you've got thousands of employees. You don't have the ability to personally sit down and mentor all of them, but principles are transferable. That's what's so great about them, is that you can share them and everybody can, once they kind of get the principle, then they can use that as a filter for decision-making and guardrails on what we're going to do, what we're not going to do. I'd love to hear about some of these principles that your team uses.
Okay, one was one I used or I learned at MIT studying engineering, which, by the way, I found I was a lousy engineer after getting 3 engineering degrees, is the Second Law of Thermodynamics, which teaches, which many top scientists said may be the most important law of nature. And that is that in a closed system, entropy or uselessness virtually always increases. And what occurred to me, or not just me, but others, is this applies not only to the physical world, but it applies to an individual, an organization, or a society. So it calls for openness. So we as individuals need to be constantly learning, be open. Oh, and just to finish on the Second Law of Thermodynamics, the only way you can offset entropy or the increasing uselessness, disorder, is by bringing in from the outside knowledge and energy. And so how do we as individuals do that? We need to be constantly learning. So how do we do that? We develop communities, what we call, from Polanyi's, another philosopher of science, from his essay, The Republic of Science, we create the Republic of Science. So you build a community where you share knowledge. And so we build those internally in the company. We build those in our industries, and we build those with other people, anything in the world. So we know everything that's going on that could affect us, our ability to contribute and succeed. And then, so that's true for an individual, for an organization, and it's also true for societies. So you look through history, the societies that have closed themselves off, like China has done this several times. When they were open, they were the most advanced society in the world, and then they closed themselves off and they became very poor, and then they opened themselves again, became very proud, they closed themselves off again. And we see that in this country, we're closing ourselves, putting in tariffs. We don't want trade, it's unfair, and so on. We don't want immigration. We don't want these ideas from outside. We're going to protect ourselves. Well, that's those who have this protectionist mentality are ignoring the second law of thermodynamics. So they may short-term be doing a little better, but long-term they're condemning themselves to uselessness.
Why is it why does a closed system I think you said it continues to scale towards more and more entropy and
Right.
dysfunction and decay. Is it because, I mean, if we're using the idea of a nation being closed, is it because the world is evolving and they're missing out on that combined knowledge or the combined resources of the broader
and things
community?
deteriorate. I mean, the basic idea of entropy is take a water glass. It holds water, so it's useful. You drop it and break it, and it's in 100 pieces. Now, how many ways are there to organize this glass into a container so it's useful? And how many ways are there for it to be useless? How many ways are those particles or atoms of glass can be distributed?
I see.
And it's one way. It's been called the arrow of time. The whole universe is gradually increasing entropy. And so we can only offset it in a limited way. But unless we're working at that, it's going to be more and more random behavior that is not productive of anything.
You know, I've experienced this. I know many business owners have. As your organization scales, and especially when you get to that point where, as the leader, you can no longer touch every activity and keep eyes on every person, you now have to depend on them knowing what to do in your absence. And the further and further away you get from the front lines of the activity, the more decay and the more fallout there is between what's in your mind for the vision and what's in your mind for the values, and then what's translated to the behaviors of the team on the front lines. You clearly have figured out a way to bridge that gap as you've grown Koch Industries. I want to hear more about that.
Yeah, and that's exactly what you were suggesting earlier. We have dedicated ourselves to, well, first of all, we took these over 100 of these principles of human progress and codified them into 5 dimensions that we call market-based management. And then we apply those in creating what we call virtuous cycles of mutual benefit. And that means, okay, given this, what capabilities do we have or we need to build that are going to make us successful in the future, that will enable us to create value for others, our customers, our communities, our employees, and society as a whole. And then how do we continually transform our ability to do that? And so that opens new opportunities. As you build new capabilities, it opens new opportunities, and then the new opportunities call for new capabilities. And so the way we do that is we first of all, in who we hire, and we have 8 guiding principles that we follow, but they come down to really 2 dimensions that we're looking for in hiring somebody. And it isn't credentials, it isn't whether you went to university or what university you went to. It's, are you contribution motivated as opposed to negatively motivated? And do you have a particular talent that will enable us to create value? And when we get those 2, then we hire them, and then we get them in the right role that fits their capabilities. And we give them the knowledge and reward them for the value they create, not where they are in the hierarchy. And then if you're in the wrong role, but you're trying hard, then we say, okay, it's our fault. We're going to find a role that fits you because you have a skill, an ability, a gift, and we'll find one that helps you. And when we do that and get people in the right role, it's gangbusters. And the other thing, so we have a group of 40 people who teach these principles full time, and they've used technology now to make this much more efficient and to reach. We have 130,000 employees now, and reach all of our employees and spread this. And as I say, if you're in a leadership position at any level, and you're not causing your people to self-actualize, if you're not fully using their knowledge and ability, including challenging, then you can't be in that role anymore. Because a poor leader at any level undermines what we're doing in that group.
How do you figure out in the hiring process if somebody is contribution motivated?
Well, I mean, it's by having somebody have a gift for that to start with. So your interviewers need to be people with the gift for detecting that. And I mean, and that's another gift certain people have and others don't. But I mean, you can ask things like, well, how'd you do in your last role? What were your successes and failures? And they say, well, I didn't have any failures. My boss was screwed up and my coworkers were lazy or whatever. Well, you don't want to hire that person because they're obviously negatively motivated or deficiency motivated.
Yeah, they have a victim mindset.
Yeah, victim mindset. And so they're looking for excuses rather than how to improve and contribute. And so what it takes is committing your company, your entire organization to these principles. And we take that as our 8 guiding principles and these 5 dimensions, which, as I say, codify the much larger group of principles of human progress.
What is it? What are the 5 dimensions? Is the dimensions of marketplace
management?
The 5
dimensions are vision, virtue and talents, knowledge processes, decision rights, and incentives. And then you can work through, if you take all these principles of human progress, which ones go in which one, and they're interrelated. But we find when all 5 are working together in a mutually reinforcing way, it is so powerful. And we are really working harder on this than we ever have. And now when I go to a meeting and I see the improvements from the bottom up, people first line doing the job or coming up with ideas how to eliminate waste, how to do things more efficiently, how to create more value for our customers. It is thrilling for me. I mean, that makes my day when I see what our people are accomplishing with these principles.
I can tell just in your body language, just your smile as you reflect on that and see the success with that. So it's vision, virtue. I missed the third one.
Vision, virtue and talents.
Virtue and talents.
Knowledge processes.
Okay. Decision rights.
Decision rights and incentives.
I've heard about decision rights. Is that kind of how much room you have to make decisions without approvals or delegation? To say more about decision rights.
Well, it's another concept, Ricardo's concept, division of labor by comparative advantage, or the application of multiple intelligence theory. You should have decision rights according to your ability to make good decisions. You should have authority. So let's say you're a trading leader, but you aren't very good at organizing or managing your people. So we'll say, okay, we're going to change your role. So you're ahead of trading strategies, but we're going to have somebody else be the leader of the group. But you'll be the leader of strategies. And so that's the way we deal with that.
So that's an example of getting somebody aligned with the decision rights, or the rights they have to make decisions align with their competency, is what it sounds like.
Right. And so for example, with me, I tell our people, okay, you all know where I can contribute and where I can't. You don't need my approval on things I can't offer much. so just have me in the meetings where you think I can contribute. And this is a blessing for me. And it is for them too, because they don't have to put up with me in every meeting. And the other thing I do is we have another principle is challenge, and that's taken from Karl Popper, a top philosopher of science, in his essay "Science is Falsification," which is when you come up with a theory, you need to make it testable. And then you don't search for things that will justify it. You go search for things that show the flaw in it. And so that's what I do. When I come up with an idea, a strategy or an acquisition or something we want to change, first thing I do is, okay, what are the various aspects that will make this successful? What do we need to do? And then I find people who are good at each one of those and come in and challenge me, show me what's wrong with it in that dimension. And when they do, and we brainstorm it, we always come up with a better answer than I started with.
But we call that.
And then, so that's what we call, that's one of our knowledge processes.
Okay.
And so then as we do that at the top and people say that works, then it goes down through the organization, down to the first line supervisors. And if they're not getting feedback and challenge from their people, they're not doing a good job as supervisor. So either they change that or they shouldn't be a supervisor at any level.
Yeah, I love the idea of challenging your own stuff. In our world, we call that calling the baby ugly, because very few people who have an actual baby call their own baby ugly. But in business, it's kind of a metaphor that your project or your area, if it's got problems, you got to be the first one to say, here's the problems in my area. There's such a temptation. I think insecure leaders want to put all the shiny pieces of their area forward and highlight what's going well, because if you reveal that you have any mistakes or flaws, that could come back on and reflect on you as a leader. But we know that lacks objectivity and ultimately leads to your demise.
Yeah, no, that's what we preach here. Whatever we're doing, we can be best at the world at something, and we are in a number of areas. But whatever it is, it's not good enough. Particularly today, somebody's going to come up with a better way or a way to make that obsolete. So we need to be the ones that drive this creative destruction rather than have somebody else drive it and drive us out of business. And so we instill that in our culture throughout. And that goes with this challenge. I mean, do you want everybody, because you're boss, to say, oh, what you're doing is wonderful? I mean, it's like you would tell a friend who's driving the car at 100 miles an hour and headed for a cliff. You say, oh, you're doing a great job of driving. What, you want them to die? Mm-hmm. I mean, this is terrible. And you want to die because you may not die, but your project or your initiative will. And would you rather have it killed early on when you're just talking about it, or an inexpensive experiment? Or do you want to have everybody tell you it's great and have it full blown and then have a disaster that ruins you and your career and the company?
It strikes me.
I mean, to me, it's so obvious. I don't know why everybody doesn't do it, but
well, I think I think it's because it may not feel safe to. I mean, it may feel like, especially if you're insecure or you don't have the confidence that telling the truth is ultimately going to be the best thing for the whole. And unfortunately, there's a lot of organizations where that's not celebrated. You know, it's all about the politics and saying the right thing to the right person. And it sounds like what you're saying is, hey, let's be brutally honest with ourselves and tell ourselves the truth, so that as a team, you know, we're just that much better off because we're actually being objective about it.
Yeah, I mean, do we want to succeed or fail?
Right. That's what it comes down to. You know, you embody all these values. You've got the principles. You're writing the books. I mean, you've been doing this for over 60 years. I mean, it's really inspiring. I know you're in a season of your career where you've got to be at least thinking about succession and legacy, probably more than when you started out. What gives you the confidence that this this really amazing thing you've built, and not just the company itself, but the values and the principles. What are you doing to ensure that when you pass the baton to the next generations of leadership to carry this forward, that those things will be lasting?
Well, I mean, they'll be different, but in our organization, our leadership, these principles are so ingrained. I mean, when you have people in leadership who've been practicing these for 20 years or 30 years, I mean, their brain now is hardwired to use these and think this way. And so that's the great thing about it. Now, and who to recruit. Now, it will be different. And we also now have stockholders who agree with what we're doing and support it, which is critical too, because the stockholders elect our board of directors who determines who's going to lead the company.
Do you spend the majority of your time mentoring and developing leaders? I mean, it seems like you've put a lot of energy into thinking, developing principles, and then communicating those principles. I know in order to do that, you've got to say no to some meetings that are more tactical and just getting in the ditch,
right,
with the shovel. You've got to work on the business, not just in it. It seems like that's something you've really emphasized.
It is, but I need to be in enough meetings so I can see what's working and what isn't. And then I can say, okay, what principles aren't we applying properly? How have we failed to communicate this, that we're making those mistakes? And I mean, and this happened like 10 years ago as technology was coming on. We were falling behind in some areas, so we said we're going to be world class in applying technology in everything we're doing, and as we do that, we'll be able to build technology businesses because we have what we call Koch Labs. We look at every one of our businesses as a laboratory for experimentation and knowledge generation. And so so actually my son created this called Koch Disruptive Technologies, where we go out and find technology entrepreneurs and invest in their companies. And there's a lot of money chasing all these top technology entrepreneurs, but we have something that a venture capital company doesn't have. We have all these businesses where they can apply this technology. So that gives them a laboratory, and we let them use that, and then we teach them our management approach, teach them these principles, help them with in any areas where they have they're not world class, and so we're getting first shot at most of these opportunities.
That's really cool. I love that angle. You really do offer something that a lot of the VCs are not able to. I'm curious from your vantage point today, as you think about your vision. What do you see going forward? Where do you kind of look out at the horizon and say that for me as a leader and for our team, this is what I'm excited about?
Well, what we're doing is looking at all our businesses and which ones have tailwinds and which ones have headwinds. And so those that have headwinds, okay, we're going to approach it differently if we're going to be the last person standing in those industries. So we're going to use the knowledge of our people to innovate there, find out how to do things more efficiently, change our product mix, and so on. And then those that have tailwinds, then we're going to particularly push creating these virtuous cycles of mutual benefit. So we're going to build capabilities so we can continually generate new opportunities there as we see the landscape change and the culture change. Like we see big changes going on now in the country driven by a combination of technology changes, the changes in culture and living habits driven by COVID, combined with the use of technology, so to do things differently, like work from home, communications, artificial intelligence, automation, so many different things. And then the third one is politics, the change in politics. How's that going to change what people are going to value and what they're going to be demand and what's going to be favored and what's going to be not favored?
You know, you've overcome a lot of challenges through the years and have faced a lot of adversity and figured out how to persevere. I'm curious, what's the biggest challenge that you feel today?
I think it's improving, transforming ourselves at a high enough rate, and then having a society that transformed the world over the last 2 centuries, driven by social entrepreneurs who discovered these principles or aspects of these principles and applied them to move societies toward equal rights and mutual benefit, where more and more people had the opportunity to realize their potential, to discover and apply their gifts so they could realize their potential. And the question is, will we have a society that does that more fully, or will that be diminished? And that's what we're working for, a society that empowers people so they can discover and apply their gifts and enabling them to contribute and succeed. And so that's a concern. Will we have a society that does that, or will we be like China has in the past and close ourselves off, or so many other countries have from time to time? And then it takes centuries for them to recover from that.
Well, you've got a lot of them listening right now, many small business owners, men and women who you and I both know are the backbone of our economy, providing many of the jobs and are out there hustling every day. Oftentimes, maybe 20, 30 employees. I can imagine if I'm a small business owner and I'm at that size, I'm looking at you going, you're Goliath. You're talking billions of dollars and 130,000 employees. Some of that can be unrelatable, but I imagine you would say that the principles still apply. What would you say to these small business men and women who are the backbone of this economy? They are our country's hope for the future. What do they need to know right now?
Okay, what you need to know, but this is both for you as an individual and for you as an organization. What capabilities do we have that will enable us to create superior value for others? And that doesn't mean you can do something. You can make a widget. Well, if everybody else can make a widget, you're not going to be successful. You need to be able to make that widget either a better widget or make it better or make it cheaper than others can. And so that's what you've got to find. What is your gift as an individual and an organization that will enable you to create superior value for others? And then you need to make sure that you have customers that have staying power. You want to give priority to customers who are going to succeed in the future and believe in this philosophy of mutual benefit, that when you create superior value for them, they reward you for it. And there's some that don't do that. And by the way, we do that. we want to create value for our suppliers just like we do our customers. Why? Because we don't want them cheapening their products and having inferior quality and being late on deliveries and not having us as not being their preferred customer. We want to be not only the preferred supplier of our customers, but the preferred customer of our suppliers.
I like that.
And the way we do that is build this a relationship of mutual benefit. Like, here's how do we pool our capabilities to make this whole value chain more efficient, and then pull it all the way through to our customers, through the whole supply chain, to build this relationship. And then you've got to find people, just like you do in employees, who are contribution motivated and believe in mutual benefit and won't take advantage of you for doing that. But when we do that and we get suppliers who want to create value for us, we find, like in an engineering construction company that does that, they can do it at a third less time and 20% lower cost, for example. I mean, we've experienced that because we help them be successful rather than put all these bureaucratic limitations on them.
Well, you're talking about going upstream and downstream, broadening the circumference of the circle outside of just your immediate business and your team. And we're thinking about leadership. What is our job? Oftentimes we think build the team. You're really saying that we need to be leading our customers and we need to be leading our suppliers. I mean, if we know things that are going to increase the value chain up and down, we really have to own that as the leader. Why do you think that we tend to focus tunnel vision just on our business and not out to customers or upstream to the suppliers?
I think it's short-term mentality. And when companies go public, many of them are pushed into that by their stock price, and their incentives are based on stock price, which if earnings are off this quarter, then your stock goes down. So we don't want to do anything to jar that. I mean, we ignore all that. We're looking at the long term. And what we try to motivate all our people to do is maximize the long-term success of Koch Industries in harmony with our guiding principles. And that is by focusing on creating value for others and our sharing in that value in this philosophy of mutual benefit. One of my previous books, Good Profit, after I'd written that, I spoke at the MIT Business School, and in Q&A afterwards, one of the students there said, I was talking about how you focus on creating value for others, and that needs to be your primary emphasis, building the capability to do that. And he said, well, isn't that naive? Don't you really need to focus on maximizing your profit? I said, well, maybe it is, but it's worked pretty well for us. But is that more naive, or thinking if what you're trying to do is maximize your profit and you're not creating value for your customers and other constituencies, that they're going to want to help you succeed?
Right.
They're going to want to pay you money or do business with you? Mm-hmm. So, I mean, that's the most naive, but that's short-term thinking.
Right.
And I know when you're struggling, like we have in the past, or when I joined the company, we were struggling. But that was it. That when we changed to this virtuous cycle mentality of becoming the preferred partner with all our constituencies and creating value for others, when we got that going, we immediately improved.
You talked about publicly traded companies and the incentives and performance is usually the horizon is just a quarter at a time. And there's a lot of things you can do to shortcut and manipulate the numbers to get a bump in any given quarter. It drives me crazy. I mean, the way that it just cascades through an entire organization, and it incentivizes everybody to do these things that long term are really destructive. how you talked about incentives being one of your 5 things. You also talked about ignoring all that. How in the midst of that pressure have you been able to incentivize alternatively and effectively ignore the whole Wall Street Q1, Q2 mindset?
Right. No, that's a great question. And this is not we spend a tremendous amount of time every year working on incentive compensation for our people. And the first thing we ask, or we try to get our people to ask themselves, is, okay, what message do I need to send this employee? And it's usually looking backwards. Okay, what have you contributed this year, and where have you not done well? So we'll reward you for that. Okay, that's part of it. But another part of the message is, what do we want this employee to do in the future to enable them to contribute more to our long-term success? And so the first thing is get the message right, and then determine the number, the amount of money, in what form will best reinforce that message. Mm. And so when we get those two together, people really get turned on, because then they believe in the system, and they know that we're not going to try to shortchange them. We want to reward them according to what they're contributing, and incentivize them for contributing even more in the future, and doing all the other things that are necessary to enable them to contribute more.
It's really good. I want you to say more about getting the message right, because we've had this experience. We teach profit sharing. We do profit sharing here at Ramsey, and it's so vital that the way that you're communicating about the incentives and profit sharing programs, I would say, is even more important than the actual number in many cases. But what people flock to and ask us about, they say, well, what's your formula? What's your formula? And you get the sense that you're missing it, that it's not a magic formula. It's the way that the message and the sharing go hand in hand. Say more about this. It's really important.
Okay, what we do is we want the discretionary bonus to be larger than the other things. Like we have performance units, and for our biggest contributors, we sell them stock in the company in a limit so we can stay private, the limited number. And then we have buyback agreements on a formula. But we want those, which are based on what the overall company does, to be a lower amount than what is discretionary. Mm. So there's not a formula. It's based on the message that we need to send every year to each employee. And so that requires a lot of trust. So you've got to do a good job at this. So we spend a tremendous amount of time trying to get that right. And we don't always get it right, but when we do, employees really get turned on. Yes. So now I really believe your system. Everything you say, it all fits now. What you tell us. So you want us to experiment. And if we had an experiment that didn't work out and it cost some money, but we learned a lot from it, you're not going to ding us for that. Now, if we do something stupid and just plunge without setting up a good experiment, then that's the other thing. Yeah, we should be dinged. And so those are all things that you can't create a formula that brings all that into account. But it requires tremendous trust. And so you as a company and you as a leader have to earn that trust. And if you violate it, boy, it is very hard to rebuild.
Well, you talked about spending a lot of time and energy on incentives. We do that here at Ramsey Solutions as well. Our CFO talks about how much of the time is spent working on comp plans and communicating comp plans. And it'd be a whole lot easier just to have a boilerplate plan. But right. You clearly understand the value of what that it gives you, this ability to teach and educate your team on how the business works, and to tie business activities and their contribution in a way where they go, oh, okay, I can now think and work like the business owner, like the CEO. And man, that is just, it's so invaluable to have leaders who are thinking like owners and not just clocking in and doing their job. I'm curious how you guys teach and instill that ownership mentality and how you communicate as you're communicating the incentives, also the education that comes with understanding how the business works and what the key drivers are.
Well, as I say, it's a whole package. You take these 5 dimensions, you get the vision, you get them to understand the vision, and our vision is to create superior value for all our constituencies, continually using less resources to do it. And when we do that right, then our profit is a measure of our contribution to society. Mm-hmm. And if you profit by other means, such as rigging the system, like occupational licensure, if you push that to keep new entrants out, then your profit is...
It's manufactured.
We shouldn't have profit,
right,
in my view. But so we fight against all those, even those that make us money. We work against all of those cronyist, protectionist measures.
Well, it sounds like what you're saying is that you have values, and the value is bigger than money. And so when money comes into play, you're working really, really hard to make sure that the money aligns with the values, not just what makes more money. And the corruption and the short-term thinking, all that stuff shows up when money and profit and bottom line really is the essence of a company's purpose. Your purpose is so much bigger than that, and it's based on these values, and I love it.
Right. And the problem, Einstein identified the problem. He said one of our major problems is that people measure what's easy to measure rather than what needs to be measured. And that's true in incentives, because it's easiest just to get a formula, and then you can measure it, and you can measure it to precision. But you're providing perverse incentives by doing that. And so it's critical that we get that right, and that the number fits the message.
Yeah. Well, and that really is the job of leadership. It's one of the few things that only us as leaders can do and not delegate. And clearly you're doing that at Koch Industries. Charles, this has been an amazing conversation. We're running out of time. I could go for hours. I mean, you're just such a wealth of brilliance and success and wisdom, and your humility is just super inspiring. Thank you so much. As we wrap up, it's 2021. 2020 was a rough year for leaders and entrepreneurs everywhere, but I really believe this is a year that we can redeem that, we can move forward. What are you excited about, and what would you say to encourage the hearts of leaders, hundreds of thousands of leaders listening right now? What would you say to them?
I would say if you take the long-term view and you focus on where you have capability to create superior value for others, and then you think of that first. And I think, and then you work at continually transforming yourselves and build the knowledge system so you don't violate the second law of thermodynamics, and you're open and you're getting these new ideas all the time, rather than not invented here, and we're going to do it all internally. You are doomed if you do that. So I would suggest you find your gifts as an organization and as a person, and then you apply whatever of these principles of human progress that will change your life, that will transform you and your ability to contribute to society. And believe me, you will have a great life. No matter what happens, you will know then you did the best you could, and you were the best person you could be. And that's all any of us can ask to be.
It's wonderful. Well, you have all the street cred to be able to say that. And my summary notes of everything you said today, know yourself, add value for everybody, stay hungry, stay open. It sounds like if we do those things consistently, we can have a long, happy life and help a lot of other people along the way.
That's it. That's what it's all about.
Thank you so much for your time today. It's been a joy to visit with you, and you're always welcome back on the EntreLeadership podcast. Thank you, Charles.
Okay. Thank you, Daniel. Enjoyed it.